Okay, what is up, everybody? Today we are going to talk about Huberman and watch one of his famous videos about ADHD, because I've never seen it before, honestly, and see if he's actually correct. So he said something about not knowing that ADHD is genetic, and which I think is kind of insane. He's a neuroscientist, if you don't know him, and if you do know him, I don't know, he's pretty famous. Most people know him right now. Anyway, okay. So basically there's a lot of controversy around him. I used to watch him pretty religiously, like probably a few years ago, and honestly, I think he's changed a lot since then. But also he has some like icky vibes. I don't know if you've read the actual controversy about him yet, but he essentially cheated on 5 people at the same time while one of them was doing IVF with him. So, kind of gross. Anyway, there was a thing that he said about ADHD. I'm going to pull it up here really quick here. It says, so he said, and this was on Threads just this March. He said, "It's interesting to learn that many psychiatrists who treat children with ADHD report that the kids' parents are often late to appointments as well and show direct signs of ADHD. This raises the question of whether some of it is genetic." I have no idea. Okay, anyway, I have not super high hopes that this is going to be a very well-informed scientific video, but you know what? I'm happy to be proven wrong, but let's just figure it out. Also, if you're here from the Discord or Patreon, say hi. I want to say hi to you. I'm just excited to hang out and discuss this. I do not do a lot of debunking things or reaction things, and so today's kind of a fun little exciting thing for all of us. But also, if you're not in the Discord or the Patreon, you 100% should. It is, I think it's the cool place to be. If you're in the Patreon, you get a free ebook every single month. And then if the one I just dropped was how to reduce your risk of dementia using nutrition science. And if you're in the Discord, you get to know all the really fun things that are happening. So we are in the middle of rebrand, which is so exciting because that just means a lot of things are changing. We're rebranding into Nutrimind Lab, which is kind of funny because this is Huberman Lab, but you know what? It's fine. That was my one qualm. I was like, maybe I don't want to do Nutrimind Lab because it's really close to Huberman Lab, but whatever. Anyway, in the Discord, we are discussing all of the crazy changes that are happening and leaking it slowly. On July 1st, we will have the live stream here on YouTube that is going to go through everything that's changed. You're going to meet the team and we're going to have some giveaways. It's really fun. And also, we're going to talk about the one thing, potentially 2 or 3 things that I've been working on that is going to change how we approach ADHD probably forever. So I'm really excited for all of this, and I hope you are too. So be sure to go into the Discord. All of those links are in the description here. And also, as we watch, and again, like if you haven't said hi yet, hello, very excited to say hi. Anyway, if anything stands out to you while we watch, just throw it in the comments, because I think it's more fun to discuss this together while we watch it. Also, I'm gonna miss things, like, I don't know, this is gonna happen, right? So, I'll be tracking as we watch. Also, if you're watching the replay of this, also hello, comment, definitely. I read all of them. I think it's really fun, and I also try to reply to as many as I can, because, I don't know, I want to get to know all of you here. So, alright. That was a really quick introduction. I hope I sped it up a little bit as good as possible. So let's watch. I will say sometimes I get some clicking noises because my microphone or my headphones are old and they don't connect to my microphone as well as I wish they did. But we'll find out. It'll be fine, right? Okay, let's do this. And I'm gonna drag a little bit. There we go. Now we look good. Okay, here we go. I put it on 1.5.
Welcome to the Huberman Lab Podcast, where we discuss science and science-based tools for everyday life. I'm Andrew Huberman, and I'm a professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford School of Medicine. Today, we are going to talk all about attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, We are also going to talk about normal levels of focus. What are normal levels of focus? And how all of us, whether or not we have ADHD or not, can improve our ability to focus, our ability to rule out distraction, turns out those are two separate things, as well as remember information better. We are also going to talk about how we can learn to relax while focusing, which turns out to be a critical component of learning new information and for coming up with new creative ideas. So whether or not you have ADHD or know someone who does, or if you're somebody who feels that they do not have ADHD, but would simply like to improve their ability to focus or to be more creative, this episode is definitely for you as well. We are going to talk about drug-based tools that are out there. We are going to talk about behavioral tools. We will talk about the role of diet and supplementation. And we will talk about new emerging brain-machine interface devices, things like transcranial magnetic stimulation. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, I will explain it to you. These are non-invasive methods for rewiring your brain in order to make focusing more natural for you and to teach you how to increase your depth of focus. Now, just a quick reminder that anytime we discuss a psychiatric disorder, it's important that we remember that all of us have the temptation to self-diagnose or to diagnose others. So as I list off some of the symptomology of ADHD, some of that symptomology might resonate with you. You might think, oh, maybe I have ADHD, or you might decide that someone you know definitely has ADHD. However, it is very important that you don't self-diagnose or diagnose somebody else. The clear and real diagnosis of ADHD really should be carried out by a psychiatrist, a physician, or a very well-trained clinical psychologist. There are clear criteria for what constitutes full-blown ADHD. However, many of us have constellations of symptoms that make us somewhat like somebody with ADHD. And if you're struggling with focus nowadays, as a lot of people are, because of stress, because of smartphone use, which turns out can induce adult ADHD, we'll talk about that, well then, pay attention to the symptomology. You may actually require professional treatment, you might not. Equally important is to remember that some of the terms that we cover, like impulse control and attention and concentration, are somewhat subjective and they can change over time. Sometimes we have a better level of attention than others. Maybe it depends on how we slept or other events going on in our life or something that we're entirely unaware of. The important thing to remember is that we can all improve our attentional capacity. We can all rewire the circuits that make heightened levels of focus more accessible to us. We can do that through multiple types of interventions, and we are going to cover all those interventions today. Before we march into the material, I'd like to remind that this podcast is separate from my teaching and research roles at Stanford. It is, however, part of my desire and effort to bring zero cost to consumer information about science and science-related tools to the general public. In keeping with that theme, I'd like to thank the sponsors of today's podcast. Our first sponsor is Roka. Roka makes eyeglasses and sunglasses that are of the utmost quality. I've spent a lifetime working on the visual system, and I can tell you that there are many features built into our visual system that allows us to see things clearly, whether or not we are in shade or bright sunlight, etc. A lot of sunglasses have the problem that you have to constantly take them off and put them back on again because of changes in background luminance, as we call it. Roka sunglasses have solved this problem. It doesn't matter if you're standing in tree shade or a bright light or what have you, you can always see things with perfect clarity. And that shows that they really understand the way that the visual system works, and their eyeglasses are built accordingly. I wear readers at night, so I wear eyeglasses to read at night or when I drive at night, and their readers and eyeglasses are terrific as well. One thing I like so much about their eyeglasses and their sunglasses is that despite being quote-unquote performance glasses, meaning you can wear them while running or swimming or biking, they don't fall off your face, even if you get sweaty, they're very lightweight, you don't even notice that they're on, is that the aesthetic is really good. You know, a lot of performance glasses, they look kind of ridiculous, frankly. They make people look like cyborgs, but their aesthetics are terrific. They have a lot of different styles you can select from. The company was founded by two all-American swimmers from Stanford, and everything about their sunglasses and eyeglasses were designed with optical clarity and performance in mind. If you'd like to try Roka, you can go to roka.com, that's ROKA.com, and enter the code Huberman to save 20% off your first order. Today's episode is also brought to us by Belcampo. Belcampo is a regenerative farm in Northern California that raises organic, grass-fed, and finished certified humane meat. I tend to eat meat.
I'm so sorry. I almost thought it said human meat. I'm so glad he wasn't actually human meat. Also, what are the odds one of these are going to be a supplement? I don't actually know. Obviously, I haven't watched. Lately, he's been having a lot of supplement ads. He's partnered with AG1 Greens, which is... I have thoughts about that. Anyway.
Eat about once a day. So typically I'll fast until about noon or 1, and then my lunch consists of a small piece of steak or chicken and some salad, and then I tend to eat my carbohydrates in the evening before I go to sleep. Sometimes, and especially lately, I'm eating my protein earlier in the day because I'm playing around with some of the findings related to protein intake early in the day. But regardless, I'm eating meat about once a day. For me, it's extremely important that any meat that I consume come from humanely raised animals and that the meat be of the very highest quality. So with Belcampo meats, the animals graze on open pastures and seasonal grasses, which results in meats that's much higher in nutrients and healthy fats, including omega-3s, which I've talked a lot about on this podcast, the importance of omega-3s for heart health, for brain health, for mood, etc. Personally, I love their ribeye steaks, their New York steaks, their chicken is terrific, and I also like the organic meatballs. All the meat is organic and grass-fed and grass-finished. If you'd like to try Belcampo, first-time customers can get 20% off by going to belcampo.com/Huberman and using the code Huberman at checkout. Today's episode is also brought to us by Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep makes mattresses and pillows that are absolutely second to none. I started sleeping on a Helix mattress about 8-9 months ago, and I've never slept better in my life. If you go to the Helix site, they have a short 2-minute quiz, and that quiz asks you questions like, do you sleep on your back? Do you sleep on your side? Do you sleep on your stomach? Do you tend to run hot or cold in the middle of the night? Maybe you don't know, and they actually have an option to select I don't know. And Helix will match you to a mattress that's specific to your sleep needs. This turns out to be really important. Some people have the tendency to run hot and sleep on their stomach. Other people lie on their back and they're waking up cold in the middle of the night. So you really need a mattress that's matched to your sleep needs. I did that, and I matched to the Dusk mattress, DUSK. And it turns out to be perfect for me and my sleep needs. As well, their pillows are really terrific. So if you're interested in upgrading your mattress, go to helixsleep.com/Huberman, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they'll match you to a customized mattress. And you'll get up to $200 off any of their mattresses, and you'll get 2 free pillows with your order. They have a 10-year warranty. You get to try it out for 100 nights risk-free. That's more than 3 months. And if you don't like it, they'll pick it up for you, and they'll take it away, and you get all your money back. So if you're interested, go to helixsleep.com/Huberman for up to $200 off your mattress and 2 free pillows. So let's talk about ADHD. Attention.
Okay, wow, that was a lot of ads. Okay, also, I feel like he gets so much money anyway. Does he even need ads? I don't know. That I am surprised none of them was a supplement though. So that's pretty okay. Also, I was going to say with the whole like pasture raised versus like whatever, like it's the profile, like the nutrient profile is super similar. It's more just like how you feel about it, you know? Like I don't know. That's my take on it. The nutrient profile is relatively similar enough. Like you're not going to have a huge difference in omega-3s, the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6s. So I wouldn't worry about it if I was you. But it is more beneficial for the environment. So yeah. Anyway. Okay, let's do this.
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Let's also talk about focus and attention and everybody's ability to focus and attend, not just people with ADHD. We are also going to talk about tools that would allow anyone, whether or not they have ADHD or not, to enhance their level of concentration and focus. Now, ADHD used to be called ADD, attention deficit disorder. We have record of ADD in the medical literature dating back to as early as 1904. Now, there's nothing special about 1904. That's just the first time that it showed up in the standard medical literature. We have to believe that ADD, which we now call ADHD, existed before 1904 and probably long before 1904. Why? Well, because it has a strong genetic component. If you have a close relative that has ADHD, there's a much higher probability that you will have ADHD. And that...
I'm so sorry. Okay, so what was the whole, I don't know if ADHD is genetic or not, question on Threads? Oh my God. Okay, now that makes me question, like, what is his purpose with saying, maybe we don't know if ADHD is genetic or not? Like, this is why I'm saying he is getting close to that, like, wellness grifter type of vibe, right? Because, like, I don't know. I'm going to assume he's going to start doing some stuff with exploiting ADHD. Just based on that. Okay, that's all.
Probability goes up depending on how closely related to that person you happen to be. So for instance, if you're an identical twin and your twin has ADHD, there's a very high concordance, as we say, a very high probability that you will have ADHD, up to 75% chance. If you have a fraternal twin with ADHD, that number goes down a bit in the 50 to 60% range, and so on. If you have a parent with ADHD, that number ranges anywhere from 10 to 25% likelihood that you will have ADHD. If you have 2 parents, and so on and so on. Okay, so there's a genetic component. That genetic component, it turns out, relates directly to how specific neural circuits in the brain wire up, the chemicals they use, and the way they use those chemicals, a topic that we are going to discuss in depth today. Now, if you have a close relative with ADHD, that does not mean that you are fated to have ADHD. And if you happen to have ADHD, there are ways to overcome those symptoms of lack of attention, impulsivity, and so on. Another important point about ADHD is that it has nothing to do with intelligence. Whether or not we're talking about intelligence measured by a standard IQ test, a rather controversial issue, as many of you probably know. There are lots of forms of intelligence that a standard IQ test just wouldn't pick up. Emotional intelligence, musical intelligence, spatial intelligence, all sorts of intelligences. None of them are related to ADHD. Being very high functioning doesn't make you more likely to have ADHD, and being ADHD doesn't necessarily mean that you have a low IQ. So there are people with ADHD who have low IQs, people with ADHD with high IQs, people with ADHD with high emotional IQ or with low IQ in the emotional scale. It's all over the place. The important point is that your ability to attend and focus does not relate to how smart you are or your IQ of any type, not just a standard IQ. The renaming of ADD to ADHD took place in the mid to late 1980s when the psychiatric community and the psychological community started taking better notice of the fact that so-called hyperactive kids also had attentional issues. This might seem obvious, but there's been extensive and ongoing revision of the criteria for designating a psychiatric disorder. And this is still an ongoing process, even today. So in the mid-'80s, we started hearing about ADHD, and then gradually that term ADD has been dropped away. However, just the renaming of ADD to ADHD has led to much better diagnosis and detection of ADHD. So right now, the current estimates are that about 1 in 10 children, and probably more, have ADHD. The current estimates are anywhere from 10%, 1 in 10, to as high as 12%. Now, fortunately, about half of those will resolve with proper treatment, but the other half typically don't. The other thing that we are seeing a lot nowadays is increased levels of ADHD in adults. And there's some question as to whether or not those adults had ADHD that went undetected during their childhood, or whether or not ADHD is now cropping up in adulthood due to the way that we are interacting with the world. In particular,
No. I don't think I've ever heard that second argument. Like, you can't just, that goes against the whole diagnostic criteria. Like, to be diagnosed with ADHD, you have to have it in childhood. It's not ADHD otherwise. That's like where the DSM stuff comes in with the actual diagnosis. And okay, well, let's just see what he's going to say.
Particular smartphone use, the combination of email, text, real world interactions, multiple apps and streams of media and social media all coming in at once, trying to manage life, all of the things that are going on are creating a kind of cloud of pulls on our attention. And so there is this question to whether or not we are creating ADHD in adults that never had ADHD prior to being an adult. So let's talk about attention. And first, let's just define what we mean by attention. Out there in the scientific literature and in discussions about ADHD, we will hear things like attention and focus and concentration and impulse control. For sake of today's discussion, attention, focus, and concentration are essentially the same thing. Okay? We could split hairs, and the scientific literature does split hairs about these. But if we want to understand the biology and we want to have a straightforward conversation about ADHD, if I say attention or focus, I'm basically referring to the same thing, unless I specify otherwise. Okay? So people with ADHD have trouble holding their attention. What is attention? Well, attention is perception. It's how we are perceiving the sensory world. So just a little bit of neurobiology 101, we are sensing things all the time. There's information coming into our nervous system all the time. For instance, right now, you're hearing sound waves. You are seeing things. You are sensing things against your skin, but you are only paying attention to some of those. And the ones that you're paying attention to are your perceptions. So if you hear my voice, you are perceiving my voice. You are not paying attention to your other senses at the moment. Okay? You might even be outside in a breeze, and until I said that, you might not be perceiving that breeze, but your body was sensing it all along. So attention and focus are more or less the same thing, but impulse control is something separate, because impulse control requires pushing out or putting the blinders on to sensory events in our environment. It means lack of perception. Impulse control is about limiting our perception. People with ADHD have poor attention and they have high levels of impulsivity. They are easily distractible. But the way that shows up is very surprising. You might think that people with ADHD just simply can't attend to anything. They really can't focus, even if they really want to. But that's simply not the case. People with ADHD, yes, they are distractible. Yes, they are impulsive. Yes, they are easily annoyed by things happening in the room. They sometimes have a high level of emotionality as well. Not always, but often. However, people with ADHD can have a hyper-focus, an incredible ability to focus on things that they really enjoy or are intrigued by. Now, this is a very important point because typically we think of somebody with ADHD as being really wild and hyperactive or having no ability whatsoever to sit still and attend. And while that phenotype, as we call it, that contour of behavior and cognition can exist, many people, if not all people with ADHD, if you give them something they really love, like if the child loves video games, or if a child loves to draw, or if an adult loves a particular type of movie or a person very much, they will obtain laser focus without any effort. So that tells us that people with ADHD have the capacity to attend, but they can't engage that attention for things that they don't really, really want to do. And as we all know, much of life, whether or not you're a child or an adult, involves doing a lot of things that we don't want to do. Much of our schooling involves doing things that we would prefer not to do and sort of forcing ourselves to do it, to attend, even though we are not super interested in what we are attending to. There are a couple of other things that people with ADHD display quite often. One is challenges with time perception. Now, time perception is a fascinating aspect of how our brain works. And later we're going to talk about time perception and how you can actually get better at time perception. It's very likely that right now you are doing things that get in the way of optimal time perception. And I will tell you how to adjust your ability to measure time with your brain. People with ADHD often run late. They often procrastinate. But what's interesting and surprising is that if they are given a deadline, they actually can perceive time very well. And they often can focus very well if the consequences of not completing a task or not attending are severe enough. It's a little bit like the way that people with ADHD can really focus if they like something. Well, if they're scared enough about the consequences of not attending, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes they can attend. If they're not really concerned about a deadline or a consequence, well, then they tend to lose track of time and they tend to underestimate how long things will take. Now, many people...
Gosh, I just think of my undergrad. Also, when I was in grad school, I did every single thing at the last minute. I don't know, obviously it all worked out well. I think the issue, honestly, is that I just have, it's fine because it gets done, but it's not ideal. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, I vibe.
We'll do that, not just people with ADHD, but people with ADHD have challenges understanding how to line up the activities of their day in order to meet particular deadlines, even if it's just a simple thing like finishing one set of tasks before lunch. Oftentimes, they will remember that lunch starts at noon, but somehow they aren't able to fill the intervening time in a way that's productive. And they can obsess about the upcoming deadline, for instance. We will talk about how to remedy this. In addition, their spatial organization skills are often subpar. Not always, But often you will find that somebody with ADHD uses what's called the pile system in order to organize things. They will take many belongings, and this could be in the kitchen or in their bedroom or in their office or in any space, and they will start piling things up according to a categorization system that makes sense to them and only them.